Collin Thompson. Currently, I'm an associate at LEK Consulting, but I graduated from BC just about a year ago in the spring of 2019.
Collin, welcome to the Full Career Cast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Collin, let's jump right into it, and let's hear a little bit more about LEK and kind of your role, and explain your area of what you do.
Yep. So starting with LEK, they kind of touch a couple different industries. The majority of their work is life sci and healthcare related, which is good. Being in Boston, I think there's a lot of major life sci businesses in the area, so it's good for business. So I'd say that's about 50% of the cases I'm on, and then 25% of the cases are general consumer cases, which can range from a variety of things. I was on a pet food case, and there's a lot of work with airlines and stuff like that, and also I'd say the last 25% would be industrial, so working in the oils and gas sector, and that will vary based on the type of office. I know our LA office does a lot more with media and technology, and if you're in Houston, it's a lot more oil and gas. But in Boston, at least, that's the general breakdown. And then for myself on a day-to-day basis, so like I said, I've been there for a year now. When you come in as an associate, the bulk of your job is working with an interview campaign. So a crucial part of any case is going to be, in addition to all the kind of research your team's doing on their own, online, and kind of paying for additional sites, you're also going to interview roughly 30 to 50 experts for a case. And so as the lowest level associate, a lot of times you'll start a case by trying to find the people to interview, to make sure that you're kind of selecting from a decent bunch of people. And then you'll interview them yourself. And after that, it's important to synthesize a lot of the feedback you're getting and make sure you're communicating that to the team. And then also eventually kind of putting that output into slides and making sure that it's being translated into the final product. I guess two examples of that. For one case, it was a life sci case working with Parkinson's disease. So it was really interesting. There was a company in Boston with a new therapy for Parkinson's, and there's certain factors that you want to evaluate each product on. Some might have higher efficacy, which means it's going to kind of cure a patient's symptoms more effectively. But there's different routes of administration, whether it's kind of you have to go to a specialized center where there's going to be you're going to have to get an IV infusion versus a less effective treatment where you can just take it as an oral tablet every day. And so getting the chance to speak with physicians, you'll kind of source some of the top experts within Parkinson's and get to talk to them. And then you'll also talk to some patients and kind of get their feedback on what's really important to them when they're looking for a therapy. And then you're, again, trying to convey that back to the team and eventually into the slides for output. And then now that I've been there for about a year now, my role has transitioned a little bit from strictly doing the interview campaigns to kind of more work in the final slide deck. And then eventually, as I progress into my A2 or second year of being an associate, I'll start to do a little more work on Excel with modeling and stuff like that. So that's a kind of a general summary of the progression. And then as you continue up, you continue to do more work on the modeling side. And then, I guess that's a somewhat accurate summary of kind of the day-to-day life at LEK.
Let's transition to the second question and hearing a little bit more about your hiring and recruiting process. I remember you said you were an intern before you got the full-time associate role. Could you touch base more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a little while. I guess it's been over 2 years now. But I did apply for the internship the fall of my junior year. And so then this isn't specific to LEK as a whole. I think their recruiting process is similar to other consulting firms, but I still think it's some helpful information where a lot of the recruiting starts for both the internship and full-time. Kind of the first couple of weeks you're back on campus, and I'm sure that'll kind of continue to be the way they do things in other consulting firms. They want to get kind of started on it as soon as possible. And so, again, LEK doesn't do anything too different. I do think, from my own experience, I know that fall during my junior year was tough, trying to balance classes and then prepping for the case interview, which can be somewhat of a grind, and I'm sure can go into more detail on that if you want, but no need. I think one thing with consulting in general is that I think it's known to be harder to get an internship. And so I got rejected from more places than I can remember from that junior year fall. But if you do get one, it's pretty easy to kind of turn that into a full-time offer. So I think that's a huge perk where, if you can kind of put in the time and effort your junior year, it makes your senior year a lot easier, assuming you like have a good experience over your summer, which I did. And yeah, it makes your senior year a lot more enjoyable when you're not worried about recruiting either the first or second semester. Just got to hang out for essentially 12 months since getting the offer. And yeah, huge stress reliever is locking down that full-time job from the offer.
So essentially for your recruiting process in your junior year, you did mostly like, we'll call it a, a split between a behavioral and case interview.
Yeah, exactly. So I think most consulting companies will have about 2 rounds of interviews. And the first round is kind of shorter cases. So you'll do about 15 minutes of behavioral stuff and then 15 minutes of a kind of a quick case where they're just trying to see if you know the overall format. And then the second interview will normally be in the office of the company that you're applying for and with some higher level like partners or something along those lines. And I know for LEK it was, you interview 3 separate times or one day, but kind of 3 30-minute chunks with different partners. And that will be, each of those will include their own case. So it's a little bit of a grind, but gives you 3 chances to kind of impress someone. So I guess you got to kind of look at it from a positive perspective.
Question really is in the same ballpark around skills and experiences. So could you tell us a little bit more about what LEK is looking for in a candidate in terms of skills and experiences, or maybe if you don't have a great answer for that, maybe what your background was that helped you land a spot with LEK?
Yeah, I can touch on a little bit of both of those. I guess I'll start with the experiences. I think that is all about just being able to show, regardless of the experience that you have had, what type of impact that you made, whether it was an internship or kind of a basic level job. I don't think they care as much as people would expect about the kind of the merit of the experience itself, but what was your role and how are you able to make change within whatever situation you found yourself in. I remember thinking back to a different interview I had junior year at a different consulting company, and a lot of the time we were talking about my experience I interned at Safeway after my freshman year. He thought that was really cool. It's great to have an internship after freshman year. And after talking about it for 2 minutes, he kind of put the question on me of, well, no, this all sounds great, but what impact did you actually have? And I was at a loss for words, and obviously did not get that internship offer. So I think in terms of experience, I think the most important thing is, regardless of your experience, really having a story down of kind of what goals you set at the beginning of whatever internship or job you had, and kind of how you were able to achieve them and what impact you were able to make. Or at least that's something I wish I would have known going into my own junior year. In terms of other experiences, like part of it is like being able to bond. I don't know how helpful this would be, but having creating a certain level of connection. And this is somewhat a little lucky, but I know at LEK during my internship, my interview, I had mentioned my experience when I went abroad to Ireland and stayed at University College Dublin. And the person who was interviewing me, he was from Ireland and had stayed there. So I think it's just being able to kind of open up and share as much as possible and trying to create some sort of connection that, I'm sure he remembered the kid who went to the same college as him on the other side of the globe as opposed to someone else. So just kind of knowing your own story and being able to communicate that, I think is really important. And then in terms of skills, I think everyone you work with and everyone who's applying is going to be really smart. Like you can study the kind of the case prep and like know the framework that you need to have. I think what they're really looking for is candidates who are, one, able to kind of enjoy themselves throughout the process, and 2, they're very personable. They're looking for feedback. I think this is something that, not just through the interview process, but also with kind of just on a day-to-day aspect of the job. Like a huge component of when we're being reviewed at the end of the case is, how as a first level associate, you're not expected to make the biggest impact on the team. You're there for morale. You're there to kind of keep everyone's spirits up and just be someone that other people can talk to and remember and have a good time with, which, sounds, I don't know, almost pedantic, but it really does kind of separate the good associates from the great ones. I think their impact on the overall team. So in terms of skills, I think kind of being able to immerse yourself in the interview and show that, maybe you're doing a case prep on like fire extinguishers. I remember this was one of mine, but kind of being able to make it interesting to yourself, I think can kind of convey this sort of passion to the person and make them want to work with you. And I think that's just something in general with consulting, kind of something I've tried to balance my first year at LEK. You have to make things interesting and be super passionate to a certain extent. And so like you have to care a lot about what you're doing. But then at the same time, you kind of have to know that mistakes are going to happen. And if you care too much, it's not the end of the world. It's, you've only been there for, 12 to 24 months, 22 years. So you're not expected to be perfect. So I think a huge skill is being able to kind of balance that fine line of, this is important to me. I want to kind of be proud of the work I'm doing. I'm really enjoying it. But at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world if something goes wrong. And so, yeah, that's kind of the main skill that I feel like is important. Because like I said, everyone there is going to be smart. They're going to know kind of the buzzwords within the industry, and they can, tell you revenue is, or profit is revenue minus expenses, stuff like that. You really just want to separate yourself and your personality, as cheesy as that may sound.
Let's transition to the last question we have here. And it's essentially, what makes your firm unique? You've been at LEK for about a year. What stood out for you, and what do you really enjoy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to give an answer that I think every single recruiter gave me, regardless of the firm, when I was applying to different places. But I do think, for me at least, the reason why there's not many other jobs I would take over LEK is just because of the social atmospheres that's created. Like other firms, they do like pro bono cases, which I'm on right now. They do kind of social events. They'll do, like, we do weekly trivia. We do a PMC bike race to raise money for charity. So there's all these different events that I'm sure kind of exist at other firms, but something that I really like at LEK, that I think is much different model than other places, is that there's no travel. So you're in the office Monday through Friday, and you really get to establish connections with your other associates, with kind of the partners in the firm. And so I think through that face-to-face connection, you're able to kind of truly get to know these people. And I think just for myself, from a kind of satisfaction standpoint, it's a lot easier to kind of bond with someone when on a new case, when maybe you haven't worked with them in the past, but you grabbed lunch with them, you know them through another friend. And so I just think not having to travel on a day-to-day basis creates a somewhat tighter knit community and a better sense of camaraderie. So that's something that I've really enjoyed. And on top of that, I don't think I would be cut out to kind of get up at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning and fly out to somewhere and then fly back Thursday nights. It is really nice just to be able to walk home to your apartment, kind of make dinner for yourself, and just unwind with your roommates. So those are two things that were really important to me, and they might not have been top of mind when I was applying all the way back in junior year, but I'm really happy with how that worked out. And I think the only other kind of key point of difference with LEK, just to note, not saying it's a great thing, not saying it's the worst thing, is they generally have shorter cases. So, more than half of the cases I'd say are called due diligences, which means they're kind of on a more compressed timeline than I think most consulting firms run. So they'll be about 3 weeks, and you are essentially evaluating an entire industry for a private equity client, where you kind of want to scope out the market, identify any trends, and then you're specifically looking at how one specific company stacks up relative to the rest of the competitors and see how it's positioned. And so I guess the pros of that is that because it is a fast pace, you're kind of on a new case every 3 weeks. You can try to look at different industries, different subsection industries. I've had a lot of different experience in life sci, healthcare, consumer, and industrials, like I mentioned, just because I've been on probably 8 or 9 cases in my first 12 months here. So that's something that I really like. At the same time, because you're constantly rotating from 2 to 3 week cases, it's somewhat like drinking through a fire hose, where it can be a little overwhelming at times. But again, that's why it's important to have that support group when you're on kind of in the office, getting to ask questions to people, because at the end of the day, everyone's been there before, and they know what it's like to kind of try to immerse yourself in a new case every couple of weeks, and so they're always willing to help. Yeah, I guess those are the two things that stick out to me. One other final thing that I guess I didn't really appreciate when I was applying, but LEK is good about staffing you automatically. I know some people at other firms kind of get there, and it's on you to network with different partners to get staffed on something. And I do think networking is an important skill, but on top of all the other kind of daily things you have to worry about, I think making sure that you're actually staffed on a case wasn't really one that I wanted to be concerned with. So just knowing that every Monday you're going to have a case to work on is kind of something that's reassuring and makes your life a little easier on a day-to-day basis. Hi, Drew. Always happy to help, and looking forward to a big BC Eagles football season. Ready to get in with Jeff Halfway. So excited about that.
Go Eagles.